100 to 100 for all these years.
So let's get the actual show started now. Welcome for the first time with absolutely no audio issues or any problems at all, us to Breaking the Game, Mistborn Adventure Game. We seem to be broadcasting on Creative on Twitch, but now it's telling me I have to hashtag something. Anyway,
What?
I don't know what. Maybe I should have done a dungeon draft. I don't care. I'm gonna do what I want because this is game development, and we're about to develop a game. So
We're
let's
about
just.
to redevelop a game.
I mean,
We're breaking
to
down
some
barriers.
extent, that's true.
Building it from the ground up.
We're going to put a sponge in a
What is-
blender and then let it reconstitute itself.
What is Mistborn really?
I mean, it's a tabletop role-playing game, but isn't it also an
adventure?
Isn't it really more of an app
Jesus
that you
God.
play with your life?
God damn it.
I want
I
to
mean,
punch you in the
what if we
face
break
right
that down
now.
even
It's
further?
punch you
It's
right in the face.
really more of a social media experience.
Mistborn the Adventure game is an organic growth medium.
Yes. I like where you're going. Keep going there.
We're going to
Okay,
we're gonna
so-
put this organic growth medium in a petri dish.
On
and
to
cultivate
actual announcements for the campaign. Next week, we're working on lining up a special guest star for Alloy of Law. And then we definitely have people for the next 3 weeks. So the next month should be pretty good for Alloy of Law. Still looking for that magical fourth person to replace SciFri.
He's irreplaceable.
I mean,
pretty
you know, I knew someone was going to say that, but while morally that might be true, physically it's actually true because there will be a person in the spot formerly labeled SciFri. So, yeah.
We have to get back to those characters. I cannot just let that sit where it's sitting right now.
I mean, that's a good
know.
stop for me. I'm good with, you know,
What?
the queen,
Well,
the queen in the north, the Inquisitor.
It's the kind of stop that can go until SciFri is free on when we're doing Mistborns again. Like that's what kind of stop it is. It's a multi-year stop, even potentially.
Come on, you oaf.
And then we come back and it's like, bum bum bum. Season 2. They said it was canceled, but the fans brought it back after a cult following.
So we're community now.
We'll make a fake video of it's really just us being like, yeah, I was really sad when it left, so I
We got mustaches
there
on.
you go, Tuxbot. Look at the doggy.
Dog.
Dog. Just get the dog to do the review.
What do you think of Mistborn?
He has no opinion.
Bark.
He has no opinion.
Let's go ahead now that announcements and giggles are out of the way and quickly reintroduce ourselves. Just in case for some reason this is your first time joining us. Let's start with bottom left-hand corner, Dr. Wreckage.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Wreckage. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Wreckage. I do playing in tabletop role-playing games. I do GMing in tabletop role-playing games. Last night we just did Fulcrum with Kelsa. The episode went really well, in my opinion. Kelsa, feel free to disagree when it comes to you. But I've also been streaming Magic the Gathering online on my home channel this past week to a resounding 60 viewers at one point and then one viewer ever since. So if you want to see the stream that ones of people have called riveting, follow me on Twitter at DOCTORWRECKAGE.
To make it easy, you spell out the Doctor and Dr. Wreckage for his Twitter.
That would be easier, but where's the fun in that?
Listen, I'm going to see if I can somehow fit your obscenely long Twitter name on the overlay next week because it's always been a problem. And it either I'm going to have to decrease the size of your text.
QR code it.
I mean, you know, for the people that follow you, that might actually work. They might consider that a kind of cryptological challenge.
I'm trying to pick up the Gravity Falls fandom. I'm going to put a cipher out that retranslates after you put together puzzle pieces, and then you go into the forest in Oregon and you find my Twitter handle emblazoned in stone.
Yep.
right. I would go to Kelsa next, but I want to interrupt real quick because there's talk in chat about which Overwatch characters we would be. My
Ooh, that's a good
gym
question.
developed an Overwatch workout. It's a real pain in the ass. Let me tell you, Winston's are fucking brutal. But worst of all is Reapers, which are carrying multiple kettleballs over your head and just going like, woo, woo, woo.
You're gonna throw your shoulder out if you do that.
No, we do it in a safe way. I'm doing it wrong.
Okay, I believe you.
But Winston's are like, crouch, up, crouch, up.
Makes sense.
Tracers involve a lot of butt workout, unsurprisingly. All right, so let's go ahead and talk to Kelsa, who the audience has pegged as a Junkrat player.
I'm a super Junkrat player.
Trash mouse.
I Trash Mouse hype, you know. I play all Trash Mouse all the time and blow shit up. It's great. It's a really good feeling when I get to explode people. So, once upon a time, I was streaming when I was playing Overwatch. However, due to this thing called sleep that apparently I haven't been getting, I haven't been able to stream. So
Overrated. Nobody needs it.
when I figured that out, it'll come back. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's just at Kelsa. KelsaDelphi, like under my name, is my Twitch handle.
So speaking of someone, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to let you lie, Tux. Just go ahead and talk to you. We'll go ahead. And talk to you.
All right.
Hey everybody, I am
Dog while he's
Tuxtradamus.
down.
I am Tuxtradamus at all the places. My apologies to anyone who, well, I guess if you didn't watch Mask yesterday because it wasn't on, you got to watch Fulcrum, so that was pretty cool.
I played Rimworld
Yeah.
instead.
Oh, which
Yeah.
Fulcrum was pretty great, by the way. I'm just
Good,
saying.
good. I was asleep because my body was like, hey, you shouldn't have this day for yourself. And it just kind of gave up after I got home from work. So that was fun. But today I'm doing much better. And we're going to talk about Mistborn. So let's do it.
Flapper gums.
All right, so I'm APGamingREAL. I've become a full-time professional Rimworld streamer.
From one stream.
So far, it has resulted in the death of many bonded pets, including over a dozen cats. The best one so far was probably when I had 5 people in my colony, and I was like, this is great. Then it turned into 90 degrees Fahrenheit and fogging rain outside, and it was like almost 100 inside my buildings, and I was like, this might be a problem. And then one guy went crazy and started attacking the rest.
I heard
because-
something about cannibalism.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that.
Okay, okay.
His wife turned down his proposal, which I assume meant butt sex or something. I don't know. They were already married. They literally had already married, and he was re-proposing to her for some reason. Maybe it's a bug. She turned it down. He was so in the dumps over the heat and the fact that he ate a raw potato that turning down the proposal from his wife drove him to insanity. He ended up killing almost everyone. And the last I heard of him, he was eating his wife's dead corpse.
Jesus.
And a raider just showed up, and he wouldn't fight back, and the raider dragged him off into the night. And I was like, all right, well, now
This
you're going
sounds
to know
like a
what
terrifying, depressing art film.
I know, right? I need to start playing this game. I didn't realize it was available for Mac, and then it is, and so I bought it.
So it's Dwarf Fortress with way better graphics. It has Prison Simulator level graphics.
Oh,
I'm excited.
Prison Architect.
Cool.
And a kind of Firefly feel to it, especially if you
Gotcha.
start in like a desert badlands kind of place. I keep starting in rainforests. I finally learned the magic of air conditioning, but you would be surprised how much power it takes to run those things.
No, yeah, it takes a lot.
And
If
pro
my-
tip,
If my electric bill is any indication.
Oh,
Oh.
unfortunately, the batteries keep exploding randomly, so you know that's a problem. Okay, that's enough for my sad story about how in RimWorld people are constantly eating each other. In my game. I finally set the game on the lowest level of difficulty. And now I am capable of moving forward. And I researched the first thing. I've started a dozen games, and I've only gotten one piece of research done. Perfect. So, welcome to, I don't know, Breaking the Game, Mistborn Adventure Game. I know it's hard to tell because there's no logo over there, but I just didn't care.
I just
Fair.
didn't
Yeah,
care.
just didn't
Fair.
care. I mean, all we're going to do is talk about things. We don't need a fancy logo.
It's true.
True.
Unless we had someone make one for us.
I mean, it's literally the name of the stream and the VODs, so you didn't come here by accident. Let's talk about what we like, then we'll talk about what we don't like, and then we'll talk about possible rules changes, and we'll see where we stand from there. Audience, if you've been watching the show, feel free to interact and throw some things in.
Yeah.
What's everybody's most likable favorite parts of the show for us?
Super simple system.
Yeah, I love like character building. Like I really appreciate like the questions you answer to
Yes.
figure out your character, and then how those traits get to be applied later on.
Yeah.
That flows really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always love having like provocative questions being part of it, and the fact that they're like mechanically something that you do to build your character is super cool.
There are plenty of systems that are like, answer these questions, and it results in things about your character. But Mistborn is the only one that I've played where those questions actually feel significant. And second of all, it's also the only one where the process of answering those questions is so natural that like we can have a guest star who doesn't say anything until an hour before the show goes up.
Yeah.
And we still can throw their character together and have it be a good character. And not have any problems with the episode. They'll actually have an amazing, an amazing time with their character and know exactly.
A bunch of other systems are like, if you're trying to make your character, think about this: where are they from? Who were they before they started adventuring? Now ignore all of that. What's their strength level? Like that's usually how character creation goes in systems, but this one's like actually like, okay, who was your character before this? That's their first trait.
And that's their first significant contribution. Right. Hey, look, it's Peachy Pixel.
Up, Peachy Pixel.
What up, y'all?
What?
Oh, we got our eyes on you, Peachy Pixel.
We got our eye on you.
Keep an eye out for that Peachy Pixel guy.
One might say no one hides from our sight.
Oh, God damn it.
Thank you, Widowmaker. Thank you. All right. I feel like we need to Darmok and Jalad this episode and only communicate in allegories from Overwatch. Die.
Nerf this?
Get good. Get good.
God, I hate this place.
Pump up the jams.
Audio medic. All
Okay,
right. Yeah. Wow.
All right.
That was going pretty good.
I feel like we probably should just turn this into a discussion on Overwatch. But while we're talking about Mistborn.
Right, Mistborn. That's a thing.
Right, things we like.
I'll tell you what I like is that characters that don't have special magic wizard powers can still be extremely useful. The system isn't like quadratic wizards, linear mages, or linear fighters. Being shot in the head will stop the majority of people with powers.
Yeah, so
the majority.
That's true.
It's worth saying that there are several powers that do feel like mages in imbalanced system where mages are screwy, but the majority of powers are really just, I can now attempt a thing that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do. My success in this thing, or even against someone who's trying to stop me, is not modified.
Are we still saying things that we like?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
So I want to counterpoint it. I know people think that there's some powers that are overpowered, but I would think those are things like gold, right? Gold ferrochemical will keep you alive forever, except if you die in certain ways.
Right.
And it's way easier to defeat a gold ferrochemist by just like shaming them out of town. You don't have to physically kill someone.
Exactly. That's like you have your health, which is what gold ferrochemy is awesome at, because basically it will never go down. But if you shame them out of town or destroy their will, they still leave.
I mean, that's literally what happened to the Inquisitor during episode 10, Attack on Terrace.
Yeah.
You guys were like, we can't fight her with physical strength. She will literally murder us all. And you're all like, calm down. Join us. And she's like, no. And you're like, are you sure? You sure you don't want to calm down? She's like, fine, whatever.
Yeah. As
It's not like I like you, Baka. But yeah, like willpower is universal, right? Like anybody can have their will defeated. That's fine. It hasn't come up yet, but I would be, I like if someone who didn't actually care about being liked by people was driven out of town, that wouldn't really flow. But that hasn't happened yet anyway, so it's not really an issue.
I think I really also like the fact that there's those multiple types of hit points.
Yeah.
Like having all three of those be significant points of conflict and attackable targets in a very tangible way really encourages you to find other avenues other than combat.
Yeah.
And I think that really, like Aricido made a good point in chat, thinking in terms of combat strength, there are definitely broken classes, but it's not about that. The fact it's not about that is really driven home by having the three different stats.
Yeah,
as
totally.
events.
Yeah, well, we've seen that when it's like when we've gotten into the, because there's I forget what we call it when it's just one roll, but like the conflict where it's multiple rolls and you have to put your dice pools together. We've seen that with characters that like we'll attack their highest thing and we just lose utterly and completely because we went into it completely poorly.
And normally it's because you also enter in like one-on-one.
Right, exactly. We go one-on-one and we target their strongest thing. Like my thing with crap, now I can't remember his name. Diedrich's brother.
Chadwick.
Chadwick,
yeah. When I targeted Chadwick's will, and he's like an extremely like stubborn, willful character, I just got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had gone after his reputation, that would have been different.
Yeah.
Well,
Chad was good in all the places.
I mean, yeah, Chad had Mistborn stats, so
Yeah.
Yeah. I will. I guess this has kind of become a criticism about balance a little bit. I think that there really isn't a problem. I think that there could be a problem. I think that if people were playing the system disingenuously with one another, the GM against his players or the players against the GM, that
but that's a huge waste of time. We don't even need to like cover that.
Yeah, it's like, well, but that sort of addresses the problems, right? Like we can see that there are potential outlier cases where there would be a problem, but we're not going to put ourselves in that situation. We're going to try and have a good story and a good narrative, and we don't want to automatically crush everyone nor be automatically crushed. So it's not.
Even then, when you build out your plan of action, and everything, you even say, what are the problems we could face? And so
I'd like to talk on plan of action a little bit more because I feel like I have a lot of compliments and complaints about plan of action, how it works. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Yeah, I think
that's a good place to go.
Let's focus on plan of action because most of the changes I wanted to make were to conflicts and plan of action.
So we have the scheme and plan of action, which are very closely related, but they're.
I mean, I love scheme. Scheme works great for me because I get to sit back, put on my mirror shades, and close my eyes for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
and just
scheme
occasionally
works really
say
well.
something like, "Tux, let's keep it in line. Hey, have you considered having an incredibly overpowered enemy show up?" And everyone's like, "Hey, that sounds great."
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did I trick them into doing that for like the third week in a row?
You did not trick us, okay? We literally said,
"Are you sure? Are you sure I didn't trick you?"
I'm pretty sure there were times we came up with shit that was so off the wall.
Yeah.
You hadn't even mentioned anything about it. And we're just like, what about this? And you're like, let's write that down.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Scheme is amazing. Plan of action provides nothing for mature role players.
I understand like kind of the point of it, but I also understand like the flaws of it. Like because having like distinct objectives really like beforehand makes it flow smoother. But the fact that you cannot possibly know for sure the way the first section is going to, no plan survives encounter with the enemy and all of that. The fact that it's, I don't want to say inflexible, but
Well, it works.
Kind of is.
It works great when you know exactly what you want to do. Like, we are going to rob this bank, and we have the key to the back door. So scene 1 is going to be us using the key. Scene 2 is going to be us sneaking into the vault or whatever. But like, if it's just like we need to figure out who the players are, we can't really do. Like, it's hard to frame like us.
Okay.
Because of how specific it is. Also,
I just had like you saying that has kind of like triggered some stuff in my brain that have kind of been milling around back there for a while.
Let's explore that.
So, like, I'm relating this to Blades, like Blades in the Dark.
Your childhood. Let us explore that.
Lots of Blades there too. So, thinking about like Blades in the Dark and thinking about the way the plan of action works are like very similar, because I think both systems assume that you, as a player, since they're very player-led systems where the players say what missions they're going to go on, and the GM just has the world around them and or fucks with their mission. Assume that the players are going to provide that information. They're going to like, okay, assuming everything goes perfectly, spell this out for me. Like, if you got to write the most optimistic story of how you accomplish your end goal, tell me how that is, and then we'll fuck with it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
And sometimes a lot of players, they don't have in mind like an end goal. Like, they're like, here's a path I want to look at, instead of having a clear objective in mind. And they're like, what if we look for an objective? You know the difference there?
Totally.
Well, there's even another thing in that, because as you say, like, what is the perfect line of reasoning? And you spell that out, but the plan of action for Mistborn doesn't allow deviation from like sure, we put the perfect objectives, right? And then something fucks it up. The following objectives are still scenes that need to happen. Like, they don't cease to happen just because we've deviated from them. So it's not even like what's the perfect version and we will fall short of that. It's literally, what are the scenes we're going to have today when we play? I almost feel that plan of action is directed towards game night players, people who play games on game night, right? And Mistborn, the adventure game, is a game that they will break out and play along with Clue and Monopoly and Secret Hitler, because it structures their game in such a way that, like, they can play Mistborn, the adventure game, as one game of many on game night.
So another interesting thing I was thinking about of how like this works is, and I think we were starting to finally, after, what did you say it was, Arthur? Like 17 episodes?
Yeah, we've had 10 episodes of regular Mistborn and 7 Alloy of Law.
Nice.
So, like, even after all this time, I think like we're just starting to really like get into the sweet spot for how to do it. And I feel like it's, if you think about it, like, there's scenes that we have to do, instead of labeling them as like, I wish what the last episode's things were still up there. I could take a look at them, but instead of like labeling them as like scenes and describing what exactly happens in them, we could, like, we have to have like it says objective, right? So like, instead of saying this is like the scene where you go to the racetrack and talk to the guy and then whatever, it's like the scene where you gain, like, the goal of that is gain access to the racetrack. And
here's my thing, right? I'm just gonna cut to the chase. For the four of us, and even for another person that we bring in that's competent, I don't think plan of action does anything positive, right? So we're talking about ways that we could maybe salvage it. Why? We don't.
Well, I think it does. I completely disagree. I think that it does bring something positive, but I think that it is frustrating that we have to change the plan of action. It means that we are required to be taking a short breather. We can't just move from one thing to another and keep momentum and keep a scene rolling.
The thing is,
But
I'm not suggesting the scheme not be there.
I mean, I mean the plan of action.
Yeah, I know. I love the scheme, but I think clarify if you want what you think we get out of plan, because I think all the positives that we get come out of the scheme part. And so we wouldn't even plan of action.
There is, but it breaks it down into simpler steps. And I see where like the parallel comes in from the books, and I'm sorry, I'm taking all of the talking time. Please.
Well,
that's fine.
I'm not sure if what I was going to say was going to help get to that point, but it feels weird when it's like we have 5 things in our plan of action, and then it's like, okay, step 1 is visit the bank. Step 2 is get into the bank, and it's like, okay, well, I kind of want to go talk to this person, but that wasn't an objective, so we're kind of not allowed to do it.
We've had one episode where that happened, and there was like 2 hours of going off script. And I was like,
it feels weird.
Please go for the next objective. I have no idea
it feels weird
what's
happening. If we're doing stuff that we're enjoying, like it feels weird that that's mechanically not what we're supposed to be doing.
I know, and that's so let me reverse this a little bit. There's a question of what's the difference between scheme and plan of action.
Oh, sure.
A scheme is a list of questions the players answer without the game master, or in this case, Mistborn, it's called the narrator. They answer it with maybe some subtle nudges from the narrator and define things like what their goal is for the session, how they're going to do it, who's going to stop them, how do they know how to do this, what do they have to work with, what don't they know, which is a way to introduce complications.
Yeah.
What could go wrong, which is another great way to introduce complications, and what comes next. And the last question is, if everything goes perfectly, what's the new plan? And that's it's a good way for the GM to know where the players want to move next, and then include foreshadowing, which can be difficult when you don't actually know what's going to happen. As a GM for Mistborn, you can't be like, all right, I know the players are going to be at this specific place. You have no idea because they're the ones writing the story. But if you know what comes next, you can be like, and now I'm going to subtly drop hints about this electric company every single episode. And maybe at some point they'll be like, I want to get into big business because that looks like a thing that they want to do.
Yeah, it's like, it's even harder for you, Arthur, because now with the absence of SciFri, every week has been less dictated by what we wanted to do next and by what the character idea of our guest star
I
is.
feel like we still have pushed forward the main narrative fairly well.
There's still
we have.
Because usually it's like we're looking for opportunities, and this character will come along that's like, hey, there's a raid.
I got an opportunity.
Hey, there's an archaeological dig.
Like,
we need to kill somebody.
Right. Hey, I'm a bandit person that's here to help you kill somebody. Like, it's been good. And then let's get up to the next part of the question. Then the plan of action are, what's the number again? It's like between 1 and 5. Between 1 and between 1 and 5. 1 and 5, but like 5. A list of 5 like objectives that are basically scenes that we want, that are how we're going to accomplish what we set out in the scheme.
So I like that, because especially for the format we're doing here as a Twitch show and not just as an ongoing campaign, especially this is a show that we're doing with, in many cases now with Alloy of Law, one-time guests. And having this broken down into scenes we're going to see, especially maybe we should phrase it in such a way it's like, okay, Wreckage, as a player, what scene do you want to have? And then, okay, Tux, as a player, what scene do you want to have? Like,
it feels like it's not it, because there's a difference between scenes that I would like to see and scenes that would help us accomplish the scheme.
And I just want to say that I think, without writing it down, that happens when we do the scheme, because the scheme happens in order. It happens in a sort of descending order that when I'm done with the scene, I have in my mind how it's going to go. I like literally to the end of it. each scene that would be in there I have in my mind, but everybody else has a different one, I think, at the end of Scheme. And I think that the scheme itself was enough for me to formulate a track that is going to keep me on track, but when it runs into everybody else's version, it'll be able to bend because we haven't written it down.
And by writing it down, though, it's a way that we can all make sure that we're on the same page. Because if your track goes one way and mine takes a huge left turn, and then we're gonna wind up somewhere in the middle and not going anywhere. And if we all write it down at first, then we can all be like, okay.
It is a good way to like get away from, because so many other games there's just a thing where you're in character arguing, or not even arguing, just talking for like 45 minutes. Like, okay, there's a fort. How do we get into the fort? I want to sneak into the fort. Like, no, sneaking into the fort's stupid. We're just gonna rush in the front door. That's even stupider than sneaking into the fort. And it's just a big thing. And making it a kind of out of character thing it's a step in the right direction. But like, I feel I'm
trying to think of where is another example of doing this. It's probably going back to Blades, because if you all, like in Blades in the Dark, you choose your whatever plan you're going to use to do your score for that one time. Mm-hmm. And that means that you all as characters have agreed now that this is the way you're going to be trying to accomplish your goal. Yeah. And if something changes, then, you know, it changes and that's fine. But you don't go into it like, we walk up to the front gate and one person thought, okay, that means we're going to knock out the guards. And the other person's like, and we're all wearing guard uniforms. And then it gets all weird.
I agree completely with Tux that many TTRPGs fall into a trap of some players think that this idea is stupid and they're going to push against it and it's going to derail the narrative. I believe that plan of action doesn't stop that. Scheme does. I think Scheme is enough to stop that. So I've stated it enough. My opinion is that Scheme is amazing and provides a lot. And I just don't see that plan of action is worth fixing.
A good thing about Blades in the Dark is like it does what it does, but it doesn't make you like, because in Blades in the Dark you say we're gonna do this, our scheme, if we're mixing it like whatever. Our scheme is break into the vault and steal the golden egg. How are we doing this? Sneakily. And then you go and do it sneakily. You don't say we're going to steal the key and then we're going to talk to the viceroy and then we're going to beat up the viceroy's son. Like, you just say like, okay, we're doing this sneakily. Let's go do it sneakily. And then also if something changes, you don't have to say, okay, let's take a break, do another entire plan. You just say, well, because you can either do, okay, we just change it, or flashbacks.
Right.
You get to mechanically pay something to say that you've prepared for this. And in Mistborn, mechanically, we are not allowed to do flashbacks.
Yeah. And mechanically, pretty much the only thing that we can do would be to take a breather to rearrange the plan.
Right.
Which I don't think we've taken advantage of enough, because that is something we can do, but it always, I feel like we always felt really a time pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to rewrite it. I just want to go with the flow. I don't want to. It's time. It's like I don't want to take the time to be like, even if we're really good at it and we've been getting better at it, it's still going to be at a minimum to rewrite the plan like 5 minutes.
So the way I've been looking at it is scheme is fine. Plan of action works for me because when you complete an objective, you get an advancement.
Yeah.
And if it's a turning point, you get a double advancement. So if it's really super important to somebody's character. What I'd like to see more of is quickly laying down objectives, trying to complete them, and then if you find something and you screw off, take a short rest afterwards, short break, and rewrite them and like refocus. But at the very least, it provides me with a pathway to know where you roughly intend to go and who might be in that path. And if at some point you're like, I got to step sideways, I really want to talk to the mayor of Butlersville. Yeah, I'm like, okay, let's take a rest.
if we frame it differently, not maybe if we like frame it not as this is a scene that is going to happen. We frame it more as something we want to accomplish is get into this building. Not we approach the side of the building and talk to guard X.
Maybe even more than that. Maybe it's literally let's fill out X number of things that could be accomplished in this scheme, right?
Yeah,
Not
like
even that we
I
want
think
to.
taking it as an objective, really literally, like making this be like a physical thing that you need to get to the next part of it, or a like emotional go ahead kind of less physical thing that we're that you're looking for. Like it needs to be like a handshake of yes, that's a deal, or actually literal contracts for the transport of goods, or the gold medal for having won the race, you know.
Like I'm seeing past things that we have done. And like let's take for example the episode that we resolved the McFanny farm stuff. The objectives would have been, get the farm, blah 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 blah, like settle things with Brieger's boys, blah blah blah. Like the last one that I would have thrown in there just because, like, you know what, maybe we can get Brieger on our side somehow. And that would have been not a scene that happens, but just one of the things that is a possible accomplishment of this situation is like, and maybe like we continue to do business with Brieger in a way that's a little bit more blah blah blah. Like, and I'm seeing other things where it's like, in video games when they have the optional objectives that are, like find the hidden room in Caesar's palace or whatever.
This should be our little quest box with the little check marks next to.
This should be our the things that we are capable of achieving, and we don't necessarily achieve everyone, and we don't necessarily have to. Like, we're just putting in literally everything in this situation that could possibly go right for us.
I'm for doing the exact opposite. We use the plan of action and its objectives to only plot things that you feel need to move ahead the plot. And if you want to do other things, I'm not going to hammer you back like that one episode and be like, we need to move ahead on this particular objective. I'm going to let you guys be loose on that.
It's just the problem with that is so much like Tux says. It ends up being get to the door, get through the door, get into the building.
Right. But it shouldn't be. Instead of it being all of those things, it should be get into the building.
Right. And if that was your objective, I don't think I'd make you guys go like one by one. I like test you guys on what you say you're going to do rather than, what would make sense. I also don't make you go to the bathroom and breathe oxygen and eat food.
Yeah, but there's been some plans of actions that felt that way, though. And
how about? And I think maybe we're doing them wrong.
Are we though, or is that just the way that it's structured?
I think we can work on this together, moving ahead. Just make plan of action, plot critical, mission critical things, and if you want to go off and talk to other people, I'm not going to drag you back. Like, you can go off. If you want to take a short breather, because you guys rarely take short breathers. Mm-hmm. You take a long breather almost every episode.
How short can a short breather be?
From 1 hour to 1 day.
Yeah, so we can like say in character we
take a carriage ride to the other side of town to talk to the mayor.
Yeah,
short breather.
So yeah, I think if we're maybe we probably don't even need to change the mechanics of it. We just need to change how we approach it.
I mean, you see this physically happen all the time in Mistborn, where either Kelsier or Vin, or in a very rare case, Spook, sit down and are like, here's a plan. And then they come back later and they're like, well, shit, the plan's not working. Time to switch it up. Here's the new plan.
Yeah.
Side quests are their own rewards, Golden. Isn't allowing players to pursue the things that they want to pursue really the ultimate benefit of side quests?
I guess maybe wording the objectives more like objectives and not as scenes that we want to see.
Yeah.
More like
yeah.
making
Like,
objective
think
one
about
not.
it, like maybe think about it backwards. Like, okay, if our end goal is to make $1 million, then how are you going to make $1 million? Okay, we're going to sell the new Disha line of Jeeps in Ellendale. Okay, fine. Which means that we need to have a big production run of the Disha line of Jeeps. So then, and what do we need to be able to have a big production run of the Disha line of Jeeps? Okay, we need more warehouse space and more workers. Okay, and what do we need to get those? Recruiting. Okay, so then that, and there's not more that you need to do before that. So that's the first thing. And then you go backward, like.
I sort of, I wonder if it wouldn't resolve all of my problems with it if instead of doing it all at the point of the scheme, we literally did it one after the other. Like, you do scheme, then you do plan of action presently. And my problem with that is that you end up saying things, either objectives or scenes you want to see, before you know either the situation at that point in time or even what you want, because you're in a situation where you lack the necessary information to even make the full thing. If maybe plan of action was literally, all right, we just finished a scheme. What is our first objective? Okay, let's go do some scenes about that. And then we either tick it off or don't, and then say, okay, what's the next objective? Because you've either passed the point where that's plausible or you've succeeded, and now it's time to follow that up.
I mean, I really feel like we could do that by just, if we finish the scheme and then just make several objectives to start with that are like, let's gather information about this. And then at the end of that, be like, okay, short rest, time to,
Yeah, I think
and always the last
actually doing
objective
the
is
short
going
rest
to
thing will be
be
good, because like I think we've been looking at it wrong. Like a short breather isn't we leave everything and go somewhere else for a week and figure it out. Like, it's literally us like cutting down an alley and being like, shit, that didn't work. What the hell do we do now? And then coming back to it like an hour later. So like, it doesn't have to be like this giant break from the action. It can just be.
I think one of the main reasons that we've been not doing it is because a lot of times we would have like a temporary asset or something that only lasts until the next short breather. And we wanted to get the most unit usage out of it as we could.
That's true.
And frankly, I don't think that's good airtime. I think I really like the planning stuff that happens at the top of an episode, but I'm foreseeing an episode here where we're dropping into planning stages all throughout, and even if they're 10 minutes, that's breaks in the narrative momentum that I don't actually think are good.
Maybe, but look at it from another perspective. You're saying like 10 minutes, but it's taking you guys 10 minutes to do a scheme now. I'm pretty sure if you dropped in, got information, and then we're like, okay, well, these are the next 3 things we're going to do, that's going to take you like 2 minutes to write up.
And we can even start doing the plan of action more in character too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like we can like kind of to the camera say, I guess the next thing we need to do is talk to Billy Bob. Like as
Lord
an
Thornton,
out of character thing. Like, yeah, like that. Like we can do it as a scene, but also as an out of character. Like, okay, we're still planning it out. And yeah, like we said, we're doing schemes a lot faster. If we have, and when we have an idea, we go through it very fast. It's the episode where like we have no idea what we're gonna do at the start, and we're like, okay, what's a scheme? Shit. What would be cool to do today?
See, that's the thing. I haven't felt that in the episodes where we know what we're doing. The plan of action just feels restrictive to me. The episodes where we know what we're doing, it's like I don't feel like it's really. I mean, it contributes something mechanically to Arthur, which I now appreciate, and so that is significant. That I don't want to just abandon it. But in the episodes where we do already know what we're doing, I don't like it. Boom, scheme's done, and I just want to start doing it, right? Like, I don't want to try and plot out the course.
So I really feel like if we do plan of actions by saying, this is the final objective, this is what we're working towards, which we would already know because that's the answer to question 1.
Yes.
We know what the end goal is going to be, and so in terms of everything else you've written down, it shouldn't be that hard to identify what your end goal is. and then set several objectives at the beginning to either gather information, get on site, travel to a place, and then from there be like, okay, short break. We know this now. Let's approach the problem from this direction. Yeah. Set the objectives in that way.
Because if you look at it,
more or less what you're asking for, Wreckage, because
it does actually make sense. Like this is how heists or whatever work. They make a plan, they do it, and then if something fucks up, they're like, "Shit, we need to."
Well, no, how heist works are they make a plan, but they secretly make a second plan for where the first plan intentionally fails.
Right. Well, this isn't leverage.
Or
real
Ocean's
heists
11.
just bring a bunch of automatic weapons, get
so
into the bank,
what you're saying
leave
is
and burn the car. It's like there's no.
Whoever our next guest star is, they need to literally bring a Xanatos plot to the table.
Oh yeah, we have to completely plan everything out ahead of time. I mean, I could just play myself as a guest star and just be like, all right, I've accounted for every possibility on both sides of the table. I'm going to play Coop's brother, who is also...
Who's also a twin-born copper
burner.
Actually,
him and the villain are just going to sit down and do that Sherlock Holmes thing he does with his brother over the falls, where they're like, I know you're going to win, but I'm going to take you with me. And then like, all right, fine. I know that I can do this. And then they plot it out in their heads.
I think something to note also kind of about the scheme and the plan of action is like, and we did this when we first started, and like we're just now learning about it. But when you're first going into it, it's very easy to do it wrong and just fuck yourself over.
Yeah.
Because like this happens with our guests all the time, and I feel like we're like we don't mean to be, but we almost jump down their throat because we're like, okay, what's something that could happen? You haven't said a lot. What's something you think could happen? Well, it could be cool if this character came out. Whoa! No, don't say that. Don't say that.
Everybody could die, right? Like, whoa.
You can say literally anything else except for that thing you just come up with, because like it's so easy to just be like, it could be cool to see this character, and then like that. But that's basically an invitation to say this character is going to come and try to screw us over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
I mean, but that's what they want to see.
Right, I know, but then it's like, well, because this happened this is why the Ashfallen ran away from Luthadel.
Right.
We were just like, it could be cool to see another Mistborn, and it could be, let's mess with all these giant noble houses.
I mean, that was Urtal first off, but yes.
Urtal, sorry, yeah.
You were like, I want to take down a House Lord, and I was like, you sure? You were like, yeah, and I was like, okay.
Right, it's as a new person, it's hard to grasp the gravity of what you're saying.
You didn't gauge your power level. I see.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have our scouters on.
Yeah, I didn't have your scouter on.
Yeah, like, and we are going to be in a position where for the next few weeks we are having guests, and I do feel that scheme and plan of action are hardest on guests. I have yet to see a guest.
Unmade fucking knocked it out the park. I think that Henley did a really good job too.
Yeah, but they both felt seeing those points in time, our guests always feel the most fish out of water during the planning stage.
But that might simply be because they've never sat down and been like, shit, I get to decide what it is I am going to play. This is so weird. Normally, the GM tells me the adventure.
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's not necessarily that it's a bad mechanic. They're just like, wow, this is so unusual.
Right, yeah, that was more my point. Is like,
I'm not suggesting it's bad. I'm just saying that is.
Well, it's exactly hard. What happened to us in the first episode of Mistborn. We were like, I don't know, what the hell do we want to do? I guess take down a House Lord? That sounds cool, right?
Yeah, sounded like a good idea. It
sounded like a great idea. And then we ran away from Urtal.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah, I guess it's just something to keep in mind of like maybe tell the guests a little, explain it to them a little better of like, understand that when you say this is a thing that could go wrong, that is going to go wrong, and we're going to see that. So if you want to see this go wrong, don't say the town blows up. Say our key doesn't work right or whatever. Like
it's almost like it should be rephrased, not what could go wrong, but what is going to go wrong, right? Because like 99.9% of the things that go on that line end up happening in some shape or form.
Right, exactly. And it's more about what do you think would be an interesting conflict to see us have to get over to accomplish our goal, not just what's the worst thing that could ever possibly happen, and then there's the question of what's the worst thing that could possibly happen, because it's like that, it's almost like that it's almost like that question's on there twice in what don't we know? I guess we don't know these 10 things. Like, whoa, calm down there.
Yeah, I believe that everything that we said, what could go wrong, happened last time. Like, I believe all the things we put on the what could go wrong went wrong.
If you say that you want things, I give you those things.
Right, and that's
I try to do my best to give you the things that you want to go wrong.
That's what's good, and like, I don't want to say bad because it's not bad. That's what's good, and like, not for I don't know. It's like scary, I guess, because like if you say the Lord Ruler shows up and punches us all in the face, that might happen. Like, we don't actually want that to happen. We're just like, that's a thing that could go wrong. We could also, all of the oxygen could leave the planet. That's something that could go wrong.
What could go wrong is, again, limited to what the players would like to see cinematically.
Right, and it's something I think it's another, like, because kind of like we're doing with the plan of action. It's like we're approaching it and framing it differently. We need to frame the bad questions differently also, not just like because we already know all of this, but at least when we tell our guests, like, what do you think is something that would be interesting to see us have to deal with in order to accomplish this, rather than say, what's the worst thing you think could happen? Like,
I think, and don't let me say this if it's not the case, I think we've explored this from every angle. I don't know that we've reached a consensus about what we would want to change specifically. But at this point, I'd be eager to talk about some other facets of the game.
Sure.
I want to talk about flashbacks.
Okay.
This has been a really salty thing. I feel like everyone really wants to have flashbacks, and I'm like, no, you can't have them. A part of the game that I like to see, but we rarely ever do, is spirit rolls. Like, there is very, very small chance that any of you are going to roll for spirit. And I'd like to turn the spirit changing details in a scene into something closer to flashbacks.
Okay.
And I'd like to do it in a way that it's like, if you flashback, it's like Blades. You flashback about a scene, right? And you're like, I left a sword there. And if you fail the flashback, it's like, yes, the sword is there, but the guard who left the sword there comes and picks it up right in front of your face, and you're like, oh no, my sword!
Yeah. I've never played Blades in the Dark with its flashback planning mechanic. That was not what I perceived to be the desire of flashbacks. I mean, for me, flashbacks are just a narrative thing that I want to talk about my character's past for a little bit. Like, not set up a thing that happened. But
I forget
like,
what I wanted to have a flashback about.
You kept wanting to flashback about your past with your brother and your father and stuff.
Yeah,
it was just purely narrative. It wasn't about like,
because it came up and it was like, let's see that so we can put some context to the scene, and then
it wasn't about like stashing a dagger in your brother's stomach. That's when we were children. I stashed a dagger in his stomach. It's like, it was about just, and that's what flashbacks in every system I've ever played have been. They've been for me to be like, this is part of the character that isn't known to the audience or to the other players, or maybe even to me yet, that I want to consolidate. I'm fine with adding a flashback that's also a like planning mechanic thing, but I just want to talk about the past sometimes.
Quit living in the past, Wreckage. Gotta live in the now.
I live my life 1/4 mile at a time.
Yes, like, and they kind of come up when they're, because that came up because we started getting into my tragedy, and it was like, let's have some context for it, because we haven't really talked about it at all. But you can also kind of see it as it happens still too. So I guess it kind of depends.
Yeah, and we haven't really engaged in tragedies. I think part of that is they've got some weird mechanics that I don't fully grok, and so I just would rather not interact with them. If they were just flashbacks, right? If they're just my tragic story, then they would come up a lot more often. Not that I want to necessarily remove the mechanics of tragedies, but it's worth pointing out while we're talking about flashbacks, like we haven't really been interacting with people's tragedies. And
Yeah, I feel like
At least not in Alloy of Law. In Alloy of Law, we're
Mhm.
very much I think we've only interacted with one character's destiny we interacted with
Flute's tragedy.
yeah, we interacted with his tragedy once, and that was basically it, I think.
Hmm.
In Ashfallen, we dealt with a lot of stuff. Like Valette's tragedy was basically driving her.
Odalys' tragedy was getting pulled up as well.
Yeah, Odalys' tragedy was the whole reason Odalys was a character in this thing, and so that it very much came up.
And I think our tragedies still serve the same purpose in Alloy of Law, in that they are formative to what the character's goals are, but that's purely internal. Like, it's just things that we are reminding ourselves of. Well, I just have to remember that the reason why Dixon's doing all this is,
and it's kind of like a character. It's like they don't really exist until we talk about them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and if it was easier to do so, if it was, here's a thought. I'm just going to throw this out here. Because I've heard that it might have gone quite well in another game, but maybe one of these times that we don't manage to get a guest together, we actually do a game which is flashbacks.
That's rough. That's really rough.
The
thing about flashbacks is the Swan Song stories issue. What happens if Sicarian dies?
Right.
Like, the problem with flashbacks is that there are already established things about the characters that they could lose, and when you flash back to it, you know, what happens? Just when we find out that, you know, Dixon had a scar over his eye the entire time and an eye patch.
Well, the thing is,
he got cut during that gambling game back in the 60s.
When I say do an episode that's set in the past, in my mind, you're not actually, neither the player nor the GM is creating a situation in which things could play out differently, right? Like, if suddenly my character fights a gang of thugs,
then let me ask, what's the purpose? Like, we are pre-deciding that nothing could possibly come out of it, so all we're doing is telling a story rather than playing to find something out, right?
Right. So, but like, does that make the flashback episodes in a television show irrelevant? Because everybody learned something they didn't know, even though on the macro level nothing could change.
That would be an interesting thing to be what changes. Is information that you have as a player to then allow a new goal to come and be in the forefront. Like, this is the flashback to remembering about something.
There would have to be questions that we want to answer, because the reference was for Winter's Edge, I assume. In those we had a few questions like, why is this character here? What did this character do? Why is this character like this? So like, we want to answer these questions. We don't quite know them yet. I guess if we had questions like that for each character, we could potentially explore that.
On Reddit recently, Aaron Sorkin, who wrote the West Wing and other influential pieces of TV media, did an AMA, and he answered a question about character backgrounds. And someone asked, how do your characters always have such like rich and vibrant histories that define them to their core? Like, what's your process? And he came on and said, when I write a 59-year-old U.S. senator, he came into being as a 59-year-old senator for the state of Virginia. Before he shows up on screen, he did not exist. And when the show ends, he ceases to exist. And the only time anything in their past ever becomes defined is when it is narratively interesting, not ahead of time. He talks about how one of his characters in the West Wing had multiple sclerosis, and he did not have multiple sclerosis until that episode. And he needed one of his characters to have a disease, basically. So then one of his characters ended up with a disease. And, not everybody does that the same way.
That feels like how I play Blades in the Dark, to go back to that again, is, there's a time when I was running a game and someone asked me a question, and that was, is anybody watching us at this party? And so they made a check with a mixed result, and I wrote down a clock, and they said, okay, you see one person who's watching you at this party. They're sitting at a table, and they don't seem to be acting suspicious other than they've been watching you at this table for a while. And I started ticking on the clock as to like shady guy watching you. I had no idea who that guy was. He only existed because it was narratively interesting to have somebody watching them at that time.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
From there, it turned out really interesting. We went through, he followed them out of the party. They bumped into each other due to a series of devil's bargains. It turns out it was one of the player's ex-lovers. So it was like, it was interesting.
Yeah, and so for the same token, it's like you're not trying to discover an outcome that's unknown, right? Because the outcome is we've seen the future, we know what happens. You're trying to discover a journey that's unknown. All of the pieces up until the end are not written right now. So anything can happen in them, even if the outcome is predetermined. I'm not saying we need to have flashback episodes, but I'm saying that there is still narrative story television value, right?
What you're saying is if I tell you at the beginning of Fellowship of the Rings that
they make it to the Mountain of Doom and the ring gets thrown in,
yeah,
like, does that actually ruin the Lord of the Rings? No. If you see, even at the end, if you show someone the very last scene of Lord of the Rings, which is them parting at the docks, right? It's not the very last scene, but that's the very last good scene. If you show them that scene, does that actually ruin the movie, right?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Because...
Yep. Nope. I'm going to use Sanderson's own experience here. He has a book series called Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians.
Okay.
And he always makes the last page of the book a fucking like weird alternate universe spoiler where something awful and terrible happens. And he always references somewhere in the book that like, don't skip to the end of this book or else something terrible's going to happen. Like, oh no, Bastille dies. And then you jump to the end of the book and Bastille is like dying and there's a picture of her bleeding on the ground. But you skip one page earlier and it's like, this is the actual end of the book. If you go one more page, you're going to get the shitty one I put for people who are losers.
I don't think that disproves anything.
No, it does. It does. If you look at the end, you know how the story is going to end and there's no like, how are they going to finish this? You know, I know that Bastille's alive at the end, but if I open the book and I'm like, Bastille's dead, I'm like, no! Now I'm going to read to see how she died! And I get to the end and I'm like, wait, she's not dead. I think you muted yourself, Wreckage.
I didn't mute myself. I'm actually just mouthing things because I can't.
All right, don't worry about it, bro. I'm not a fan of flashback episodes at all. I'm not a fan of anything that doesn't push forward.
Since you are the GM, I'm gonna bow to you in this because if you're not on board, we're not doing it.
Well, yeah, no, and that's fine. I guess like
I like being able to push forward on things rather than look back. I'm okay with flashbacking.
I guess if we had reasons to do it, like if it was like
if you want to bring up something tragic from your backstory or something whatever from your backstory, just to mention that time that we had ice cream at that place. I don't know where that was weird. I'm sorry.
Like referencing it more like if you want to explore something from your backstory, you just bring it up as a thing, and then really because exactly that, like it doesn't really matter until it becomes a thing in the present in the story that we're telling right now. Like it doesn't really matter that Valette got beat the fuck out of when she was a kid until it matters.
Until it mattered, right. I'm willing to open up more on flashbacks, but not to have flashbacks that could I don't know, like go nowhere. You know, I don't want to have a flashback to the Inquisitor eating her first ice cream, right? It does nothing for any of us.
I mean, but that's like saying I don't want to have scenes that go nowhere.
But
Yes,
what
I
if
agree.
we're trying to calm the Inquisitor down by Valette giving her a scoop of ice cream?
I
And so
mean, in
we
that
need to have
case,
the
yes.
flashback to the
If-
first time they shared ice cream together at the festival.
If I am releasing the Iron Fist on flashbacks, it's only a little bit, and I would like it to be focused towards resolving things in the present by going to the past. I, too, read that article by Aaron Sorkin. I think we came to two different conclusions, and you were talking about a totally different character. The part I remembered was about Bartlett being president and having MS and hiding it from everybody. So, anyway, the point is, even that was part of pushing forward the narrative in the present, right? Because it was like, what's happening now? The president's having a seizure. Oh, no. And then his wife's like, he's got MS. Flashback. That's how I remember that episode. Of course, I also remember an episode where there was like a huge aircraft carrier, and it was the middle of the night, and the president's on a ham radio, and the guy's like, I can't see anything, sir. It was one of the best episodes.
I mean, there are
using them to push forward or explain something or like bring up, point to something that's happening right now. It is helpful, yeah. And that's kind of like what I wanted to do, because like it was like, hey, Valette has these scars. What's up with that? Well, let's have a little thing about it and then push forward with it. Like that could be interesting to see a little more of. Like, or if it's like we dealt with Odalys and the fact that her husband was a bag of shit. Like, let's see a scene of him being a bag of shit so we have some context, and then move forward with why she replaced him with Kinsey or whatever. Like, whatever it is.
I feel like all of those could still be connected to a present narrative.
Right, totally.
If you write down things you'd like to explore in your past, and then when you come to a guy that's like beating his wife, you're like, oh, I want to do this flashback, Arthur, and I'm like, cool, let's do it. And then we come back to the present, and you're like, I punched that guy in the face with my fist. It goes through the back end of his face because I'm a ferrochemist.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like attaching it so that it's driving the present narrative rather than just being like, let's explore this thing in the past. I would directly relate my experience to watching West Marches on that. For anybody that watched West Marches, I felt the inspiration mechanic that Steven threw on there wasn't attractive to me. Like, seeing scenes from people's past that had no relation to what they were doing now, no matter how awesome they were, I just wasn't invested. Grigori and the balalaika and learning about his mother and hearing about his songs, sure, those are great, but they have nothing to do with playing a tabletop RPG. It has nothing to do with going on adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I see some division in chat over this, which I guess is good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with connecting them to, like, we doing a thing where it's just we come in from the break and it's like, let's see what Vyse was like at school for no reason.
I mean, I think to some extent we're singling out flashbacks when in our entire interaction together is, I must now trust you to do a good scene. Suddenly it's like, well, be careful with flashbacks because you might not do a good scene. Every time we open our mouths, we have the potential to not do well.
Right, but with flashbacks specifically, you could change the past. You're playing dangerous games.
I think that there's a
Listen,
certain...
Wreckage, you could get away with time crime, okay?
Fucking time crime.
Time crime.
I think the point is that in order to effectively do a flashback like you're describing, Wreckage, we would have to have the agreement that whatever you get out of that is ephemeral. Like, it's knowledge or something like that. And there would be no permanent consequence. But that also means that you'd have to play like in character, not knowing that you're invincible, but also out of character, knowing you literally cannot kill your character right now.
I mean, if I started a flashback, it's certainly not to have 10 minutes of I'm invincible. I go up to the big guy and slap him around a bit. I'm doing it because I literally want like possible flashbacks. I can see us flashbacking to when our mom died in Alloy of Law, because we've specified that it occurred and under what circumstances it was occurring. And so it can't have a different outcome. But the entire context of that scene, which is a very formative scene in our lives, is not known to either of us because we haven't talked about it and we haven't specified it. And we
But at the same time, I mean, isn't that also related to your tragedy as well as mine?
Yes.
I mean, if we were to start poking at our tragedy,
Right.
that is something that would be coming to the forefront in the present day.
My
Like,
like I'm saying, I don't want to do the mechanics of tragedy necessarily. I don't not want to do them, but I'm not talking about specifically like, let's do the mechanics of tragedy. I mean, that is a
I feel
flashback
like,
that I would want
so I
to.
guess what I'm trying to say is like, I would like to explore that as well. And maybe we should talk about that. But I feel like I agree with Arthur here that taking that flashback and making it directly relatable to a current present scene, because that is going to be an emotionally charged flashback. Like that scene is going to be emotionally charged for sure. And having that then cut to our characters totally cold and dispassionate and not thinking about your dead mother at all would be jarring. And so if you want to do that flashback, it would have to be at a narrative point in the story where the repercussions of that have waved forward in time.
See,
And
I like flashbacks that aren't actually necessarily the character reliving the moment.
right, I'm not saying that you're reliving the moment, but I'm saying like this is a moment where some aspect of that flashback is currently affecting you in some way. Like if you were to have narratively had a limp this entire time, don't you have a cane?
I have a cane for completely showy reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if that was not the case?
Yeah.
Like hypothetically.
Sure. We might want to
Then-
see why I have a limp.
Right.
My point is, and again, Arthur doesn't necessarily want to do this,
And
so
this-
that's fine.
This would be an emotional limp, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh. But like there's actually, I think, as a filler episode, television that would be entertaining that is based entirely in our characters' pasts for the scenes that we know exist but have not been formed, have not been formative. They don't have to actually have an unknown outcome to not be entertaining television. I know there's some discussion in the chat, but there are dozens of movies and books where, as part of the art, like the opening of the movie is, this is what happened. Blah, 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 blah.
All right,
blah.
Kaiser Soze.
This is exactly what happened. But now I'm going to tell you
So,
how.
as an alternate, I want to talk about, specific to Alloy of Law and all of its books, flashbacks are always used to drive the present narrative. And that's
true.
where I basically, having reread 2 of the 3 of them so far, anytime Wax does a flashback, it's always the coin he got from his uncle and why that's relevant now. Lessie died and why that's relevant now. Meeting Lessie and why is that relative now? Every single flashback in that entire narrative is always about something that's happening in the present, and we need to see it in order to understand the context. And I feel like it'd be a very Mistborn-y thing to hook that to this system.
I agree.
And just be like, yes, I have knowledge of this thing that I'm about to face, Arthur. Let's flash back to when I got that knowledge. I will make a spirit roll. It's something I would like to see.
I like flashbacks, doing them as connecting context to something that's currently happening. Like the mother, your character's mother. Like if something came up where you guys have to deal with that, and we see that scene, and then come back to why that's important now. I would like it would be it. Granted, it wouldn't not be interesting to just see that as a thing, but it would have a lot more impact if it was like, she died because of this thing. That thing is coming back. Why is this thing a thing?
This is why we fight.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's quite a lot about flashbacks and narrative stuff. Arthur, what's next?
Conflicts.
Okay.
I wanted to just
Tell us about conflict.
I just wanted to open up conflict dice.
Time for conflict resolution.
To stop the like 10 die no nudge rule. And be like, yeah, you can add your extra nudges in and like throw them in there, right? So it's something I also want to take the chains off of for when you lose as well. I've started doing it lately. I haven't really said it, but if you go back over like the last 3 episodes, you can see it happen in every episode, where I just let someone who loses a roll but still has 3 nudges do a re-roll to take another action. And I feel like that getting another action thing in is very PCE, very main character-y kind of thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
It also leaves you, like, if you lose and you drop 3 nudges, that also opens you up to a ton of complications on that roll, which I think is way more interesting than just losing and not having anything happen to you. Like, if you fail at something and nothing happens, that's kind of boring. But if you fail, but you're like, wait, I have a second shot, but it's way harder now, that sounds more interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I want to open up nudges on conflict, and I want to just put the triple nudge rule. Anytime you have it, just be like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it right now. So it could mean player characters will commit way more dice to attack and leave themselves completely open, but they'll get that shot to, like, re-roll dice pools. Right? Because in a conflict, if you commit 13 dice, you would then have 3 nudges. Whatever you roll, no matter what you roll, you could be like, I'm going to take those 3 nudges and make a second action. And I'm going to use all of the dice I set aside for defense in order to take a second action. And basically be like, I'm going to shoot a lot of guns this round. I'm going to shoot so many guns. I'm going to shoot dozens of guns. You know why? Because I'm the greatest gunslinger in the world. I have 15 traits about guns, and I'm ambidextrous, and everyone loves me. I don't know if that's the thing you guys want to do. I feel like it would make conflicts a lot less complicated. It would just, across the board, make it so you could commit however many dice you want to things.
So I was rereading the rules, like, literally right now while you were talking. And so just to refresh, a challenge is something difficult that has no direct opposition.
Right.
A contest is a simple competition against each other, and a conflict is the actual trying to inflict physical, social, or emotional harm.
Yep. The conflict is an extended series of challenges or contests.
Right.
So
the other interesting thing I noticed was dice pools. Actually, I'm going to put that on the back burner because it's not directly related to the topic you were talking about. But remind me about dice pools.
I mean, let's talk about it now, since
This is related.
this is related. Throwing extra die in the die pool on a conflict is what I'm talking about.
So it's talking about gaining, grow your pool for each trait that supports an action. This is true whether the trait belongs to you, an ally, or an opponent, as long as you can justify how they help.
Yes.
And so I think we've been not taking advantage of our allies' traits.
Often in conflicts, you guys act alone rather than in support of each other.
Also true, which is a problem we've had all along.
Yeah.
I've done a very good job of having, or at least I think I have, of when a enemy to you has a trait that would be beneficial to you, being like, I lose a die because he's subservient.
Yeah, I will say that that sort of makes it sound like we're actually supposed to be cognizant of their traits, and you sort of have the trait list. So only you can say this would benefit you. But I have a strong memory of arguing for traits that you originally say no to, but then you immediately say, actually, you know what, that makes sense. So perhaps we actually should be seeing our enemy's traits. I'm gonna say we've only done conflict a couple times.
I'm gonna say
we try to
probably
avoid
5.
They didn't go like
Right.
swimmingly, but I also haven't experienced them enough to have a cohesive thought about what would make them better.
I mean, Inquisitor fight versus
The conflict,
Francine
like,
went well. Everything else has gone terribly for you.
right? Well,
Basically.
the conflict, it's so
Not
weird
even
because
gone
like
terribly. Just
it
felt-
feels like unless we distinctly prepare for a conflict and do it right, we're gonna lose no matter what. That's what it
Well,
feels like.
that's the challenge level of opponents you often place against yourselves.
Right. It's like
You guys,
Are very bad at checking your scouters. Yeah.
yeah, no, the Brieger fight didn't go your way. That was a mess, and it ended as a mess for both parties, and turned out to be pretty interesting.
right. Yeah.
I mean, yes, technically you did lose that fight, and you lost it poorly, but he lost it even more.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was
Brieger's
an
dead.
interesting outcome.
Brieger's
now
dead
Brieger's
after
dead.
months
Yeah,
of
the
I-
serving.
outcomes, yeah.
I'm
The
sad
outcomes
that
are always
Brieger died.
interesting. Yeah, the outcomes have always been interesting, but
Yeah,
it's
we're
always
good
been like,
storytellers.
it's always been like, I feel like I'm actually pretty good at this. I feel like I could win a conflict. Oh, I actually lost terribly.
He's doing the thing. He's doing the thing.
I'm doing this thing because a little piece of Brieger will live inside you forever.
Sing.
I know. His soul is pinned to yours now.
It's fine.
With the
No, I'm
what?
just sad because you ruined the very interesting love triangle that I was enjoying.
Yeah, that never even got a chance to really happen. That's
I know, it's sad.
It's okay. Desha and Friction have still
Yeah,
got
Desha and Friction have something going on there.
something. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, but yeah, I guess what like with Desha, I was like, I'm really good at fighting. I'm gonna try fighting someone. I lost terribly. Awesome. With Valette, I'm really good at talking to people. I'm gonna try talking to him. I lost terribly. Great. Like that feels like it happens every time. Whenever I'm like, I have a decent amount of dice and a decent amount of traits that I can devote towards this. I feel like I can do pretty well in this conflict, and I just like, you lose. Do you want to give up? Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah. It. The thing is, I don't really. I agree that they don't feel like they have been perfect. I feel like they could use some work, but we haven't done it enough. I literally do not know how. I don't have the foggiest thought of how it could be.
Which I guess it's also true that I tried to talk down a Mistborn who could block my mental powers. I tried to beat up a gold feruchemist that can heal from my sword attack. So like, that's also very true of picking your opponents. But yeah, it was still just like, I guess a little jarring to be like, I feel like I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. I'm never gonna try it again. Okay.
Speaking of not being good at things, is this maybe a segue into talking about guns?
All right, let's talk about guns.
I don't think they should go off of physique. I think they should go off of wits.
Well, it's weird because your strength and your dexterity are combined into physique. Anything you're good at physically, it means physique.
Right.
So like you can have the best balance in the world and have the same physique score as the strongest man in the world.
And so the jarring thing is that like that makes no distinction between the most agile person and the most muscular person.
Right, so that's a little weird.
And that's a very, very important distinction that's typically made. And that doesn't bother me on the macro level, but when we bring guns into it, the idea of the gun is that it is supposed to make everybody equal on the battlefield. And that includes the man who already can't fight. And in this system, you have to already be able to fight with a gun, which if the world reflected the mechanics, then in Alloy of Law, the gun would not be the great equalizer of men. It would just be the great thing that made the people who could already fight even more fighty.
Right. It makes the strong stronger, basically. It doesn't
and the it's a central theme to, and the West was won by Winchester. Like that's the central theme, is that you walk into a bar, and just because you're the fastest in the West don't mean nothing around here, stranger. There's 18 of us and one of you, and one of us can shoot you dead. You get one of us, maybe you get two. But just because old lefty here ain't got two hands and old one eye is blind in both eyes, don't mean nothing.
Old one nose over here.
Because all we got to do is put a bullet in you. Yeah, I think it, because in Mistborn, right, which isn't true in the real world, but in Mistborn, the dude with the sword is just as likely to win the fight as the dude with the gun. Circumstances,
See, I'm going to cut in here and disagree. And the way that guns level the playing field is that if you make no attempt to defend yourself, literally any pair will cause a gun to hit. And most guns tend to be extremely high damage.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't used it a lot yet, but guns give you a huge range advantage that could take 6 or more turns to like overcome.
Yeah.
But even more importantly, while that person is running towards you, you can run away and just shoot a gun behind you. It can be very difficult to approach a person with a gun. In this particular game, we've always done it by shooting a person once in the head, or driving a car towards people with guns, then stepping out and shooting them with more guns. Or we handled the combat cinematically to the most extent for the temple fight, but even there, Desha had to duck and cover and run into close range stealthily. Like, I think the advantages of guns haven't been displayed so far because we've been getting around it. But
I think the advantages of guns hasn't been displayed because of the number of characters on screen, most of them can close a range gap in a single turn because half of them are pewter burners or jumpers or leapers or pullers or, able to do this, that, or the other thing. I'm on the whole, I don't think guns have much, not none, but much of a inherent advantage. And so I think it's actually super important that people with wits have a weapon they can use. In the Western era, I feel like that's on flavor, and that's just me.
I don't know. It's hard to because then it means like the nerdy kid that it kind of makes it the same issue of like your strength and your dexterity being the same thing, because then it means the nerdy kid who always reads books can shoot a gun as best as the fastest gun in the West.
Yeah, I'm really not a fan of altering wits. The whole point of wits in the duel was that you could freak your opponent out into drawing and you would outdraw them. It wasn't a matter of physical speed. Crafty has been very specific on Twitter that wits is not to be used for gun shooting.
It makes it.
I'm willing to talk about it for sure.
I get the idea of it, that like you know how to hold a gun and you know where to shoot and you're good at like seeing where you're supposed to aim. But then physique is like your hand not shaking and like, you're able to actually keep your hand steady when you fire, which is the main part of shooting a gun.
That's
like
true.
So it's.
But you have to be studying a gun to actually shoot it well. Like, just because you are a physical and dexterous person does not actually mean that you go out onto the range and shoot a good shot. In fact, you'd have to sit there for a while and practice, even with your innate physical talents, to get to be a good shot. So,
and then maybe that's where traits come in too. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Because like you can have a 3 physique, which means you're kind of dexterous, but then you have the trait of fastest gun in the West and learn how to shoot from the second fastest gun in the West or whatever. Like, so it brings you up to 5. Like,
it just, where it really falls apart for me is where the Koloss blooded who get a bunch of physique just because they're giants, that suddenly makes them the best sniper in the world. That makes no fucking sense at all. And I get that it's, again,
I mean, how would you divide it then? Like, we would have to introduce an entirely new stat and restat the entire way it works, right?
I wouldn't want to introduce a new stat. Like, the only thing that I'm open to is the idea that because it does actually take a learned skill, gunfighting technically falls under wits, or wits and physique even. That is what I would do, but I wouldn't make, like, we already know that physique being both strength and dex sort of makes these weird things that don't work, and we know that. And we're sort of saying the same thing with wits here, is like, well, how come
Well,
being a
I
book
think
nerd is the same thing as being skilled? It's like,
so.
well, no, we're never going to make it perfect without adding another trait or 10 traits. And I don't want to do that because Mistborn works so well because there's only 3.
So I guess here's the kind of the point about how your traits work as a character that I think really do it, because like if you have if the fastest person alive and the strongest person alive, they both have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 physique, like ridiculous. But they're also going to have traits that are like the fastest person alive or the strongest person alive.
So the Flash
Massive,
and the Hulk.
whip thing.
All right.
Yeah, no, I'm saying if you were describing the Flash and the Hulk, they might both have the same physique stat, but then when you look at their
the traits are going to be what pushes you to do something better than a person with the same physique score.
Right, exactly.
I assume Friction has a trait about shooting, and I don't. So
No.
he doesn't.
When have we ever described Friction as having a gun?
When
You
he
gave
just-
him a sniper.
He's our sniper.
I mean,
You
Rieger was your sniper.
We had a big discussion last week about how he's a really good sniper because he can heat the bullet really a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he can deal a huge amount of damage. That doesn't mean he's good with a gun. He's a
Mm.
mechanic.
I thought that was his whole thing.
No.
Yeah.
His whole thing is that he's a mechanic. He
I
is
thought
capable
I
of sniping
we're talking
insofar
about him
as
being Torbjorn.
he owns a gun. Yes. Okay. If we're going to use that discussion, how many Torbjorn snipers have you seen?
Sorry, I
The
must
fall off on that fucking gun is ridiculous. It's like a
I thought that
half
was a
inch
thing.
every 100 meters.
Every game, fully 25% of my kills are my pistol
Oh,
as
God.
Torbjorn.
I really wish I could mute Wreckage right there. I knew that
I
was going to come,
sorry,
too.
I thought that was a thing. I
I
thought he was our sniper.
played-
Because it was a
No,
thing.
Torbjorn is a
Wreckage.
shotgunner. His gun is a shotgun.
Yeah.
Look, it has a shotgun on it, but if they're far away and you're not using your pistol, you're doing it wrong.
If they're far away and you're engaging them, you're playing the wrong character. You're a defensive hero who can only shoot 40 meters.
Nope.
We're back to Overwatch. Anyway. That was Kelsa's point, was that traits are what make you better at something than someone with the same score. So like
Mhm.
two people could both have a 7 physique, but the shooter's gonna have fastest gun in the West, and I killed an Inquisitor with a gun or whatever. Like that's what's gonna push them
Dang.
above someone like with the same thing. Or
Sure,
whatever.
I mean, it's like they're saying in the chat, right? Wits isn't only intelligence. The part about wits in this system that makes sense is because it's also like reaction time. It's also cleverness. It's also these things that do make sense for guns. So I feel that the most narratively on flavor solution that doesn't harsh anybody's mellow is to say that you can use both to shoot.
I have a counter proposal. And that would be to use a high wit score as a like narrative advantage. If you have 2 narrative advantages, you get an extra die. And like having a wit score of X is considered an advantage, and having a wit score of X times 2 considered 2 narrative advantages, or something like that.
That actually seems fair. Like having a high wit score could mean I both have a good physique score to shoot him. I also have a high wit score to know that if I aim up here and shoot, it's going to carry the bullet down to there. So that means I have a slight advantage.
Okay, I can see that. If
Okay,
it's
cool.
like 3 or 4 would be a good like.
And yeah, and then that's also only one narrative advantage.
Right,
You'd also
and you
need
need 2
another
of them in
advantage
order to
actually
get a die.
an extra
Yep.
die. Cool. I like that.
But then you'd be in a pretty good position to be able to have that extra narrative advantage.
Right, totally. I like this.
Because there's a lot of times when you wind up you only have 1, and like this would be a way to push that. So
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Anything else we want to cover?
Yes. I think that and I'm going to preface this with I don't necessarily want it to be more powerful. But when I first got it, I misread the Jinx power, and I don't think it actually accomplishes narratively what I would make it interesting to me. So it, like, when I first read the power, the fact that you can't choose the target, it's the closest person to you, that made it seem like this dangerous power that goes horribly wrong when you use it. And the result of it hasn't been that, because it has very little actual impact on a situation. Like, I feel like in my mind, the narrative is like, you only use this power when you it's your nuclear option, right? Because like things are just going to start falling off of signs, and stuff's just going to start bursting on fire, and the wall socket's going to cause a fire because the electrical is just going to arc, and like bad luck is going to fucking like, it's your nuclear option because you can't control its target. That's what made it feel like it was a nuclear option, but the actual mechanical result of Jinx is negligible, right? Like, I managed to make it give him one less dice, which is not nothing, but it didn't have much narrative oomph. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are, Arthur.
Not all of the powers that Twinborn combaters can access are very useful. I know you expected to wield the Jinx hammer as an actual hammer. It might be a rubber hammer. I'm not sure. I feel like you could probably use it in an interesting way, even if you haven't yet figured it out. What's the alternative? Like,
I don't really have a suggestion.
Okay,
I
you
just
don't like it.
As yeah, I mean, as
Okay.
long as we're just talking about stuff.
Because my next thing was going to be like, what don't we like about the game? And you can be like, jinxing. It's dumb.
Yeah. Jinxing just falls flat for me.
Okay.
That's what it is specifically. Like, it doesn't. I wanted it to be a narratively cool power because it's so dangerous, and it just falls flat. Like, it doesn't overperform or underperform. It's just sort of like a wet fart, right? Like,
I guess that's kind of a thing that, like, at least from reading a lot of the powers, like, they don't do what I would expect them to do from reading them in the book. Like, in the book, I see someone that can, like, smoke somebody or can riot somebody, and they just go to town and do whatever the hell they want to do. And when I riot people, it gives me an extra die on my charm roll. Arthur's been doing a very good job of,
you never push it. You never riot people crazily.
Right, because it would do exactly the opposite of what I want to do.
Damn.
Well,
because if I'm pushing my riot, I destroy their mental capacities down to, like, being unable to think, and I don't want to do that. I want to.
Can you provide an example of something from the book that you would like to do?
Because Alrienne, when she used, because she's a rioter and she can just tell people what to do, basically.
It was super obvious to everyone around that she was doing it, though. Like, when she did it to the bandits and had them, like, escort her back to town, everyone that saw it was like, oh, there she goes again, using her power. Otherwise, these horrible bandits probably would have murdered her in her sleep.
Right. Well, and that's, I guess that's true. I guess I was expecting. We've been kind of doing it. Like, you've done a very good job of, like,
and everyone was like, "Wow, she's rioting Breeze. That's why Breeze is acting so weird lately."
You've been doing a very good job of it, because, like, something I would expect it, like, and we've done what I've kind of expected it to do. Of, like, if I riot you and make you pissed off, it shouldn't just be when I talk to you, it means I get to talk to you better. It should mean I make you angry, and when you deal with other people, you're angry.
Yes, still angry. Mm-hmm.
Right, and we've been doing that, which is good. It's just something that I like the first time I used it, I was like, oh, this is kind of not what I was expecting. But then we changed it. Like, we didn't change it. We've been kind of adding altering the effects a little bit, which is and basically what we've been doing is, like, it gives someone a trait they can take advantage of, which is cool. I like that, actually. So, yeah.
I would say the opposite of Jinx, Uncanny Luck, is way better. Mechanically, it's awesome. In that you can spend 10 charges to add a die roll.
No, you get to add a nudge. If it's a Yeah, you just get to add a nudge, and I guess
mean, for
yeah,
spending 1 charge of chromium, that's pretty good.
10. Oh,
I mean,
10 compounded.
It's 1
charges,
becomes
yeah.
10 compounded.
Right.
So you're just spending 1 charge. That's pretty good. You just pick up a nudge every single time.
Yeah, I mean, but see, there's nothing narrative about that. That's why I didn't get that power.
I mean,
it just makes my rolls
talk
better.
narratively about it. We can't define the narrative for all these things. I thought it did a pretty good job of asking Unmade about his gun. Like, does it jam? Does the cylinder roll? Something like that.
Yeah, and like
I don't really want to define it too much. I know it's something you want more definition on or to be more clear, but then you just have guidelines you have to work with.
Well, it's not that that's not so much it. It's like
Okay.
Uncanny Luck, what does it provide? It provides me a nudge on all rolls.
Yeah.
Its only thing is to actually make my rolls better. Whereas Jinx, when I first read it, seemed to come with this narrative weight that I think to some extent we did do well in the interaction with Unmade, but we were also 2-player characters, and it was like the copper ring that had his memories rolling towards the drain. Like that was the first time that it was like, oh man, this is actually why I have that power, because this adds something to the scene. Not because I actually, like, to some extent, I want a way to be able to defend myself as a player character, and Jinx is sort of that, and Uncanny Luck could be that too, because it makes all of my rolls better, but Jinx does it in a way that's like, look, if the face character is undoing his bolo tie and going to start jinxing people, it's his nuclear option, because shit's going to fucking go down. I thought of it more as a prompt for things to happen, and it's just so far been a bit disappointing.
Maybe. I feel like you want to use it like the Death Star, and it's really more of like an X-Wing option. It sounds like you wanted to be like, and now I control all luck everywhere, and I'm safe from bullets.
No, the opposite. I want it to be like in Breaking Bad when he throws a grenade in the room that he's in because he needs to beat those guys, so it still blows up in his face. Like,
definitely over exaggerating.
When you hold on to a thermal detonator.
Yeah, I want a dead man switch that is Jinx, basically. Like
I mean, yes, and if you added negative die pool and they failed on their roll, that would be a possible outcome that might not normally happen. So let's talk about things we don't like about Mistborn, although we probably touched a lot of them.
Yeah, we kind of
anything we haven't touched yet that you would like to see changed, or you just don't like in general.
My complaint is not about Mistborn; it's about you, Arthur.
All right, I know I'm too damn handsome.
Damn
problem.
God,
just can't look away.
It's even worse. You haven't even
my
seen
compliments for you.
How am
I supposed to compliment you if you take them right out of my mouth?
I haven't brought my
So
horse
pretty.
in either. My horse is way prettier than I am.
Look at my horse.
One of these days, I'm going to bring my horse, Destroyer, on the show, and everyone's going to be like, wow, that's literally the greatest horse that's ever lived.
I believe that is
Roach
true.
who?
I believe that is true.
I guess anything I would have to say that could be improved, we've already talked about. Like we've said it a lot, but Mistborn is a really solid system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really. I will say, here's something I don't like, but I also don't think we need to even discuss changing. But a pair of nudges not being a pair is a huge wet. It's a huge wet fart. I've already used that phrase once, but it's like, it is like these are our crits, and then they just amount to nothing. I don't think we need to change it. But if we're talking specifically about things we don't like, the best result on a dice actually being bad.
It's only a best result because you believe a 6 is the best result. It's a thing you've narratively been told all your life that, the highest number is the best.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're saying the highest number isn't the best, 5 is the best.
Right, it is.
It's a state of mind that you are in, Wreckage.
It's something you have to get used to. Like when you roll, the first time you roll and you get a pair of 6s and you're just like, oh, and then they're like, actually, that doesn't mean a single thing, man. Like, oh. Okay.
Mhm.
What if it was Star Wars die, and instead of numbers, they just had the number of successes, and instead of a 6, they had an advantage die?
Yeah, and I hated that too. I hated that you
okay.
could get like 6 advantage and no success, and it still amounted to nothing.
I mean, usually you got some pretty cool stuff out of it.
I fought for to some degree in Star Wars the idea that perhaps it would be viable that a certain number of advantage could turn into a success. But that was never on the table with Arthur.
That's true.
But like at a certain point you can just say, well, like 10 advantage. Is 10 advantage a success? Can 10 advantage be a success? And it's like at a certain point, you're not breaking
But
the
look at all
system
the
to
cool
say
things you can do with that advantage.
Yeah, it's another. I guess
You might
it's-
not
it's-
accomplish what
it's
you
very
want.
similar to that. Like it's a way of like you don't do the thing you wanted, but because you did it, you failed, not as bad as you would have failed. Like
It
you
was
did some good things. Like you tried to pick the lock, you didn't pick the lock, but the guy was impressed in how you picked the lock, and so you earned his favor or whatever. Like
He didn't shoot you in the face.
right, exactly. Like you still get some good out of it, but the particular thing you tried to do didn't succeed. Which admittedly can be a little jarring at first, but once you kind of like see it and get used to it, like it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense as a thing. It's just when I see green numbers, I expect good. I expect success.
Yeah.
it's
yes,
not
the
success.
Pavlovian 6 outlier.
Right, exactly. It's a very Pavlovian thing. Like I see 2 green numbers, that means I succeeded, right? Like
When
no.
I'm playing Mistborn, I'm like 6s, yeah.
Right,
I'm
and
do so
the
much
6s are
stuff
still
with them.
good. They're just not success good.
Yeah, they're just not the good we were expecting.
Right. It's the good we
And
deserve,
then-
not the good we need right now.
Then the trick is as a player to try to use those nudges in a way that is interesting and effective. When
Mhm.
you've got that massive disappointment looming over you of you did not actually succeed,
Yeah.
it can be really hard.
Well, and that
So-
sort of comes back to our earlier conversation too, right? Because right now we're basically just using the nudges on our failed rolls to mitigate the failure, which is
Mhm.
it's not interesting. But also the alternative is like, well, God, I just failed. I could make this even worse by also trying to, use the nudges to declare a random thing, which is probably not going to be as good as just preventing this backlash. It is very much one of those like the mechanical correct choice is not the narratively interesting choice. And so to some extent it inspires not the best story. So that's the thing I don't like, which I don't think needs to be changed. It's just something that is not pleasant. Does anybody else have anything they just don't like about Mistborn? Because I think there's probably not a very big list.
There honestly actually really isn't.
Yeah.
Because all the stuff we've already talked about isn't like I don't like this. It's like, well, maybe it could work a little bit differently to support things a little better. It's
I'm
not
upset
like
no one has made a Final Fantasy Tactics hack for this game. I feel like I would play that.
I mean, let's be real. You could play any setting in the Mistborn rule set.
I mean, you can play any setting, but it's about setting up the powers. And I really feel like I would play a good Geomancer calculator. I would just be like, what's that? You're on a level 5 swamp? Boom! That's just me wanting to play Final Fantasy Tactics as a TTRPG.
Yeah,
it never happened. There's way too much math in the background to do that. But
if you separate it from the powers, the system's you can slot it into whatever you want, which is pretty cool.
I mean, I've always said that Mistborn is a parallel development to Burning Wheel.
Mhm.
They reached a similar conclusion through different methods.
Yeah.
So, just to summarize what we've gone over, looser rules on short breaks and player agenda in as far as plane of action works. Looser rules on flashbacks. I'd really like to keep them focused to driving a present narrative, but I'm willing to explore the past, as long as it's not Dixon gets shot in the face and also has a scar over his eye.
That we just the camera's just been very weirdly placed. We've never seen it before.
Right.
But now that we've seen it happen, we see it all the time.
No, it's like Terminator. Like we have the flashback after I get hit in the face for the first time, and my makeup gets pulled apart, and I've actually got this hideous scar, and it's like Terminator, like I'm a robot from the future.
Oh
But-
boy.
My lecomancy is just going back in time and doing it again.
Oh wow. Wow, there's a lot of animes about that. Madoka. Wow, Madoka. Man, that is a scary anime. Yeah.
So plan of action.
Nudges and allowing more dice during conflicts. Not that we ever actually do conflicts, but just in case we do. And slight changes to the way we fire guns. Like, if you're almost as good at shooting guns with your brains as you are with your bods, get an extra advanced die thingy.
Yeah, it counts as a narrative advantage. So like, you still need something else to get that die, but it helps.
All
it
right.
doesn't mean you are the best.
So before we do outros, I want to talk about everybody's favorite moment on the show. And I'm going to start with Tux and then go clockwise.
Why would you do this to me?
I know.
Oh my god.
If he needs time, maybe
I mean,
Kelsa
yeah.
has a favorite
You
moment.
know what? We'll throw it out there. We'll get loose, drum circle, dolphin friendly
I
tuna.
do have
I
a favorite
hate to be
moment.
selfish with it, but Valette getting Francine on her side and then ending with that, like, look at who's on my side now. Look who's sitting next to me. Everything's fine. Everything's great. There's literally no bad that could come of this. Was just fantastic. Like,
That was the all along the Watchtower moment from Battlestar Galactica, where you're like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Just
I don't.
because my
That's
whole
exactly
life
it. Like,
is
that's why I want to get back
shattered
to
and
Watchtower so
breaking,
bad.
and I
wanna
know all this
see-
weird stuff.
It changed my destiny. Is how big of a moment that was for Valette. I changed my destiny because of it, and I had to write an essay for Arthur. For all the viewers at home, I had to write a 250-word essay about why this was a big enough deal for Valette.
Yeah,
I
we're
can't
having a
believe you
conversation
actually
right
did
now
it.
where Arthur's all loosey-goosey with the rules. But then he's like, you want to change your destiny? Fuck, man, I don't know about that.
I wrote an essay, and it worked.
You're going to have to
So it's
empirically
good.
prove
Yeah,
that
it got fan art. It got fan art. That's how good it was.
Was
gonna find-
really good.
I'm gonna find that fan art.
So I think my favorite moment from a role-playing perspective was in that fight where I'm like, all right, I just slap her right there when Odalys slapped Valette.
It's really good too.
for bad mouthing Kensei. Like, I felt like it was a really
Yeah. It's like,
a really
mine's your
poignant
uncle. Oh yeah,
character-
my uncle.
yeah, that was a really
Bam.
poignant character moment there for like both of us, and the relationship between those characters, and the relationship between both of our characters and Kensei. Like, I really felt that was a very great moment. And then there was also a couple of moments in Alloy of Law, like when in the episode where we killed Coop.
Oh.
Just like that whole scene of the date with Coop and
Yeah.
ending with him
You
just
monster.
dead, and
You monster.
like that was some grade A role playing right there, is what I'm trying to say.
It's really good.
So
My favorite scene, and it feels a little bit like the high school quarterback who's like, man, I peaked in high school. My favorite scene was definitely Diedrich's entrance, honestly, the first time.
Oh yeah.
With the coming in the window, because like he knew the place. This is his guest house, basically. Like coming in the window with apples, like, hey, what's going on? Like, oh, I'm part of your family now. Okay, whatever. Like, let me just chill out. I haven't. Yeah. Well, and Arosito sort of captured the spirit of that moment in the stealing the cloak fan art that he did, which was amazing. With the cat, like Diedrich is definitely. I want to go back to that. Just like Tux says, I feel like, especially with how serious things are probably going to be in the next one, it would probably be a lot of fun to be Diedrich not being very serious. I will say that a lot of moments as Dixon maybe could have been my favorite scene, but a lot of them have fallen just a little bit, like they haven't panned out, right? Like, it could have been my favorite scene when I shook that guy's hand and burned away his medals and like won the race, but then he just drank more medals. So I was like,
that was salty about that.
yeah,
Well,
like that
I
would have
was
been my
salty
favorite
for
scene.
you about that.
And I also really would have liked the Dixon drinking wine, listening to opera while Coop's getting assassinated scene, but it felt a little forced. So I that is to say, Diedrich definitely has my hands down favorite scene, but I still really like Dixon. Arthur, is something wrong?
No. I
Do you
just
have
love
a
how
favorite
Coop
scene?
became such a big deal.
Only because we killed him.
Yeah.
It was really
You
good.
put Sherlock Holmes in front of a crime family. We were not going to make the mistake that Moriarty makes.
My favorite scene is actually a continuation of two scenes. It was the fight with Risha on the roof.
Yeah, that was really good too.
I always imagine that as just being a fucking mess where Evelyn is flying around, getting thrown everywhere because she has metal. A desperate Mistborn attempting to brutally murder Odalys, who's just popping all these weird powers. And then 10 seconds later when it's like, Arturo fell off the roof and is dead, and Odalys is like, no! And the actual Arturo's in the background, like, slinking around in his little flesh bob, like, I'm sorry, Odalys.
That was so sad too.
It was amazing, because
It
then we
was.
got to conclude that later when Kinsey came back and,
Oh my
like,
God,
that was
remembered
so-
it during the
oh,
flashback
Saddest
scene.
thing. Holy crap.
Yeah.
It was the saddest thing.
It was
Oh.
amazing. I really enjoyed that set of scenes. 3 scenes divided in a few hours, or in the case of the Alloy of Law one, several episodes, but existing very close together in time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I really like that whole like flashback in the fact that Kinsey came back for Alloy of Law.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
that
I
love.
mean, when I announced that we were going to do Alloy of Law for the first time, I was like, it's got to be Burge. Like, it can't.
Yeah.
And when he was like, I don't know what character to play, I was like, have you considered playing Kinsey in the future? Because you
Right?
live forever. And he was like, cool, we got it. Yeah.
And that was
I
was
watched
great.
because I had to work, so I wasn't in the first Alloy of Law thing. And then when I watched that over, I was so sad because it was like, oh yeah, I don't remember being Arturo. Like, no.
It's even better because that's become a recurring plot point now.
I know.
The culmination
I know.
of his tragedy in the first game has become like his driving point in the second game.
Dog, what are you doing?
And I really like that. Like the fact that we can have that one character to tie over the arcs between these two
My shirt.
campaigns, and like being like, no, really, these are actually taking place 300 years apart.
Just wait until we get Mistborn War 2 and then Mistborn in Space.
Uh,
Kinsey's going to be there for all of it.
You can say it's there for the whole.
Captain Kinsey will lead the starship
He's just gonna be like a
Excelsior in a
mental wreck
time
at that
bubble at near light speed.
I mean, surely the goo that makes them up is still made of cells that eventually degrade.
Nope.
they
Nope.
Magic.
They can mimic humans and turn their cells into human cells to keep them alive.
yeah.
There's a scene where Akandra eats part of a person and then mimics their body and fills their guts in with new guts so they don't die from a horrible gut wound.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's a very high level of organic control. I suppose they probably are effectively immortal.
Yeah, they're
they
demigods.
are in fact effectively
They
immortal.
can talk to God.
A god.
I mean, as far as it's concerned for Mistborn, you know.
Yeah, Space Kinsey is sold.
I mean, prepare for spoilers here. You ready? Just in case you haven't read Secret History yet. But, you know, Kelsier. Boom. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Hurry up, finish all those Mistborn books so you can read Secret History and then be like, that's what was happening the whole time? It makes sense now. I can't believe that I didn't realize in that one scene that this is exactly what's happening.
Oh my god, I had to go back and like reread through like
What's even better is that Sanderson hinted at everything that was going to happen in in Secret History for years. He hinted at it during an interview where someone asked him who would win in a fight between, what is her name from Wheel of Time, Rand's first teacher.
I never read Wheel of Time.
Ah, man. Not Cadsuane. She's the annoying one that no one likes. Boy, I can't remember it now. I feel like an idiot for bringing it up. But anyway, it's a character from Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, but he ended up being the author that finished it, Sanderson.
Yeah.
And so when those two books went up, they were like, we're going to have the best fighters from each book hook up. And it's Moraine. Thank you, Sith Master. It's Moraine. It was a showdown between Moraine and Kelsier, and the end conclusion was that they weren't going to fight because everyone knew that, of course, Moraine was going to win. She had the pattern on the side. But Kelsier's final moment was like, there's such interesting things you can do in the Sanderson universe with spikes and stuff. And that was 4 years before Secret History was written.
Man, this is reminding me of a totally different series of novels that I haven't finished reading yet because the last book isn't out, and I've stopped myself from reading the fourth book before the fifth book is published because the third book ended on a cliffhanger that...
What series of novels is this? Because now I'm confused.
It's the Demon Cycle series.
Oh, I thought for sure you were going to be like Twilight, and I'd be like, no, Rickrolled!
No, this is actually a legit, serious, actually really good series. Starting with The Warded Man that I really liked. But at the end of the third book, there's this huge cliffhanger. Like literally, there's a cliff involved. And the fourth book came out, but then I was like, oh, if I read this and it leads to a cliffhanger and there's another year and a half left, I'm going to flip tables. It's easier to not read that book and then read the last two at the same time. Don't ask me how my brain works as far as those things are concerned. It's just how it goes.
So for those asking, it's called Cage Match 2012, Moraine Damodred versus Kelsier. Written by Brandon Sanderson. And Kelsier taps out of the fight by just being like, yeah, listen, pattern. It's really good.
I haven't read Wheel of Time.
You're missing out. You're missing out.
I'm told by...
I've heard it's good.
I mean, it's basically primers up until Sanderson takes it over, and then the books really take off.
You say that, but as someone who frequents a literature group, people who read Wheel of Time do not like Sanderson after he...
Mid-range Wheel of Time books are the worst. It gets really misogynist and really weird. They start putting collars on everybody. There's a lot of really deep, kind of semi-racist, kind of semi-sexist discussions about slavery.
Oh.
The male characters do whatever the fuck they want with no consequences ever. And the female characters are constantly fighting just for someone to be like, you're not a witch!
Anyway, I'm just repeating somebody else's opinion that I don't know anything about. So.
End of Wheel of Time was great. Really good. Really good. All right. So let's do some outros and, wrap this up. I'm APGamingREAL, and I need a haircut. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, all at APGamingREAL. If this is your first time learning anything about Mistborn Ashfallen or Mistborn Ally of Law, head to youtube.com/APGamingREAL. Just want to mention once more, youtube.com/APGamingREAL. And check out the playlist for Mistborn and Mistborn Ally of Law. 17 episodes. That's roughly almost 80 hours of entertaining content where people get shot in the face with coins or bullets or
cut
that's
in
about
half.
it. I mean, mostly they just get shot in the face with a coin or a bullet.
Cut in half.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we shoot swords at people, too.
I cut somebody in half. It was fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes we kind of effectively lobotomize someone by stealing their memory ring.
Yeah.
True.
Well, a couple of little things like that.
You
Yeah.
know.
No problem. No problem. Let's talk about you, Wreckage.
Hi, I'm Dr. Wreckage, and I need a haircut. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Wreckage.
Got to
Full
take
spelling
my thing, huh?
of doctor. I also need a haircut. It happens to be true.
So you're saying to find you on Twitter, they should go to Dr. Wreckage, but Doctor written out in its entirety.
Yes, that is what I am saying.
Okay.
You would do that if you like watching tabletop role-playing streams, because I do those. I GM them and play in them, and will retweet those things. You might also do that if you liked our discussion about literature, because I am a writer, and my stream will feature creative, actual writing. You may do that if you like Magic the Gathering Online, because I play that on my stream. And you may do that if you like Unity, because I will also be making Unity games on my stream. So join me for that, if you will.
Okay.
Nice.
Kelsa, what's up with you?
Hello, I'm Kelsa. You can find me on Twitter at Kelsa, or here on Twitch, KelsaDelphi. And I also play and run a variety of role-playing games, and occasionally stream Overwatch when I don't sleep in. You follow me on Twitter in order to find out. I always tweet when I'm going live with something, or you can follow me on Twitch as well. I always will host whenever I'm on somebody's show. Right now, I'm not running any role-playing games on my own show, which, thank goodness, I tried that for a while, and producing and running a show at the same time is crazy. You're crazy, Arthur. And yeah, playing on other people's shows, running games on other people's shows is way, way, way saner. And that's my life, pretty much. 5 days a week. I'm on shows. So,
Speaking of people who are on shows, let's talk to you, Tuxtradamus.
It's
yeah,
true.
how many shows are you on a week, Tuxtradamus?
Yeah, about that. That's a lot. My name is Tuxtradamus, and I don't need a haircut because I had one last week. I'm on a lot of stuff
We're
now.
gonna talk about my hair, damn it.
I'm on this, so catch us next week with Person. Special guest insert here.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Catch us tomorrow with Winter's Edge, which is going to be really fun. It's going to be our third one in a row. Yes.
Don't jinx it.
I mean, he just jinxed it. He literally opened his mouth. And was like, how can I ruin everyone's night?
Sunday, I'm going to be on Swarg's channel with the actual start of our new thing. Not our new thing. We're going into a new part of our continuing thing. Monday is the day that I don't have anything on. Tuesday, we're doing, well, it's not something you can watch. So be on the lookout for the podcast that Wreckage and AP and I are on. Wednesday, I believe, is going to be the start of Iron Saddles on Henley's channel. And Thursday, we will hopefully be doing masks because I hopefully won't be sick. So all of that content you can find. That's still a thing. It's still a thing. Yay. And the little thing.
Is Tuxtradamus still doing masks.com?
So I have to say, I'm really excited for Mass, as always. Mass was fucking incredible. But I'm also excited to do the podcast with Wreckage and Tux because I feel like our starter
it looks
session,
so good.
our podcast was really fucking on point. There was no table talk. We were just like in character.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Also in character, Wreckage. And he was like, well, in character. By the way, call me Doctor. And I was like, awesome. Let's talk it to the next
And then I was
person
like,
in
hey,
character.
in character flirting.
That sounds like you.
I'm playing our face, so I'm just sticking to the role.
Yeah. Don't worry. It's not because Tux likes to do this. His characters just somehow always work out to be that way mechanically. It's how they're built.
This is the first character.
Like even
Maybe they were born that way.
This is the first character. This is the second character where I've made it a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did it on Mask and got shot down. 10 seconds into Mask, literally my first action, I'm like, all right,
Yep.
we're going to do that love stuff. Boom, shut down. Whole rest of the session, I'm like, man, I'm super salty about that. Nah.
Yeah, that was really awkward. That's the best part about. That's one of the best parts about Mask is the awkward teen stuff. The super awkward teen romance, and it was
we need to talk about Monster Hearts sometime.
Oh my god,
good.
Monster Hearts.
That
I was
Monster
a teenager
Hearts.
once.
Monster Hearts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that Monster
That was
Hearts
fun.
episode I was
Good.
on with
Oh my god.
Eric Vulgaris was fucking so good.
Oh my god.
It was so
Yep.
good.
I
What was
know, I know you
So
liked
terrible.
it, Tux.
What was your guy's name?
Chazwick Duthor. His name was Chaz.
Yeah.
Chaz. Chaz.
He had a really long
Yeah,
Irish
and then you
name.
ate my band.
Yeah.
You basically ate my band.
I was a vampire.
It was
if you
pretty
haven't
hilarious.
played Monster Hearts, you definitely need to go to ericvulgaris.com or youtube.com/ericvulgaris and watch the Monster Hearts episode with me in it. So, I don't know who's going to be guesting next Friday, but we've gone out of our way to try to set up a number of people. Luke, a.k.a. Platinum Dragon, is going to be on the 12th. Yo Jojo is going to be on the 19th. And I Am Miss Snarky Pants is going to be on the 26th.
Yes.
So we got a lot more Aloe of Law coming, hopefully with few or no interruptions. Prepare for more cowboy stuff. And you know what? Why don't you just go ahead, have a good night, or if you're watching it during the day and it's YouTube, have a good day. I really don't want to be time biased towards you. If night and day have ceased to become a thing in the future,
Yep.
Enjoy your
Have a
hellish
good
landscape.
flat.
It's gonna be called a cycle. Have a good cycle.
Good,
The world is
good
flat.
time.
Nothing matters anymore. All things have become one thing.
Look, if you're in a post-apocalyptic hellscape and you just have this one little piece of media that you can hold on to, look, please don't get.
If they only had this episode, that'd be bad
Please
because we're
feel
talking about
like-
all this awesome stuff and they can't go see any of it.
Right.
Yeah, but they can keep rewatching it and try and learn who we are as people. Like they will necessarily create this entire headcanon about what they're watching to expand upon the only piece of media, the only distraction that they have from the hellish landscape.
The only piece of media they have is us talking about other media.
I mean,
That would be such torture.
each of us has, except for Arthur, gotten up and walked away for a brief moment during this episode. So they'll just make an entire narrative about what's happening when we go off screen.
Spoiler
More
alert,
importantly,
dogs.
if there were aliens, and this is the first thing they discovered about us,
Oh
I
no!
really want them to figure out how to give a human a haircut.
See,
I
those two
need
need
to-
haircuts, but he had a
that's
haircut
not-
last
this is
week.
Fuzzy. This is fuzzy. It needs to not be fuzzy.
All right.
If this is the first things aliens discover, please come to my planet and make me
Don't
immortal
destroy us.
with
Please
magic
don't destroy
technology.
us.
I would love to live forever through the advent of super science technology.
I mean, for them, it would just be regular science.
Forever.
All right.
Damn, it's just regular science.
Thank you, aliens. Thank you, viewers. And thank you all. Let's have a good night.
Forever. Forever.